I'm sure there
There
is.
must be a
Does anyone
switch
know how
somewhere.
to do it?
Anybody know where it is?
The switch is that touch panel.
Does that do anything useful? Do you have a technician wizard here?
All right, well, first things first. I think since Doug said that, you may feel like you want to reach out to some of your ones who want to chat with you guys. So this is my email address. Don't spam me with useless stuff, but if you really want to reach out and talk and bounce ideas off of me and ask me questions, I'm all over it. There we go. I'll put it in the middle. And if you see me continuously opening this, it's just because I took notes while he was talking, so I could think about ways to reflect back. So my name is Beth Sauerhaft, and I graduated in December of '85 from Grinnell as an American Studies major. And here I am with a career in sustainability. Went on to have a master's and a PhD in the sciences. So you can weave in different ways. So the other thing is, how many of you are on LinkedIn? Is there anyone not on LinkedIn? Go on LinkedIn. Or, I think that's still, whether you're, mid-career or you're Gen Z, I think people are still using LinkedIn. So feel free, if you want, you can connect with me on LinkedIn as well. Just remind me that, you're in Doug Cochran's class, so I know who you are, otherwise I'll just ignore it. So, oh shoot, I think I just hit the delete button. How do I get back to it? Come on, you guys probably know this, right? Reasons and delete. There we go. Okay. I'm probably going to weave around in a bunch of different places. So you guys have seen my bio, is that correct? So you roughly kind of know what I've done. I graduated from Grinnell. I had a couple of short-term jobs, which probably actually are not on my bio. So the most exciting jobs in my career, I think, were those first few years after Grinnell. The 3 to 7 years of wandering. I wouldn't exactly say it was wandering. There are moments of drift and wander, for sure, where you just think, what the heck is going to come next? But like I had a really cool job as a park ranger in the Grand Canyon down at Phantom Ranch. So if you've ever been in a park and you go to those ranger talks, I didn't wear one of those hats like Smokey Bear, but I gave ranger talks down at Phantom Ranch. And I had another job in the Park Service on the island of Maui at the top of Haleakala volcano. Anybody been there? Did you go to ranger talk?
No.
Did your car lock up and not start because of the vapor lock? The high elevation? I had to learn how to break into cars because people leave their keys. They close the door with the key in there, and then I had to learn how to start cars. I don't think it works with today's cars, but this was back in the late 80s to get the air bubble out of there. So you never know what cool things you're going to learn in your career. Then I went for a master's in environmental management, studied natural resource ecology, and had some really cool summer jobs while I was doing that, where I was doing natural resource inventory of a watershed in Maine, and I got to spend my summer canoeing up and down this river and doing other work with a lot of canoeing. And then I had another job that I did my master's project on, where I did a resource inventory and management plan of a watershed in Newfoundland, Canada, which is beautiful, an amazing place to go if any of you have the desire to go into wild areas. So again, I got to spend a summer canoeing and doing some camping in some pretty rustic places. Then I finished my master's, and I was trying to think, okay, what comes next? And as I was pounding pavement looking for a job, the organizations that I was trying to get jobs in, like World Wildlife Fund, Conservation International, a lot of those conservation organizations, they said, well, you need three things. You need a PhD, you need foreign language, and you need experience in an emerging market, a developing country, so that we know that you're not a risk. We can put you in one of these countries and you're not going to just, wilt. So, okay, I thought, let's see. I studied 2 years of French in high school. I studied a year of Spanish here. Figured that was kind of enough. I just had to use them because, you can study for years, but until you really use it, that's how you learn the language. And how am I going to get this experience in a developing country? So the woman I shared an apartment with at Duke was doing a PhD in biological anthropology on lemurs and what was it, like female dominance of lemurs or something like that. And so she said she would pay my way to be a field assistant for 6 months, and therefore I would get what I need and she would get cheap labor. So I spent 6 months sleeping in a tent in the rainforest in Madagascar, cooking all my food over a fire. And you can make some amazing cakes and breads and stuff. You can cook really well over a campfire once you get past the burning everything stage. Basically people would know, people in the conservation field knew that if you'd spent time in the rainforest of Madagascar in a tent, you could handle pretty much anything. You can handle parasites, you can handle, not having golden toilets, you can handle, you can figure out how to talk to people where you don't have, like I had to speak French with the Malagazis, and that was my second language, and they use French as their second language. And what was really cool is we would go, as the lemurs go, jumping from tree to tree to tree, we'd go running around on the ground with our heads up like this, trying to track them through the forest. And then they go up in the trees, they'll start munching on the leaves, and eventually when they're done eating, they go to sleep. And you've got time to kill, because you got to catch them when they start moving again, because it's all about documenting what their activities are and what they eat and where they go. So, strike up conversations, and if you can imagine anyone here who's studied a foreign language for 1 year or 2 years, but you've never really used it before, trying to talk with someone who doesn't know what a washing machine is, or a dishwasher, or a microwave oven, lives in a mud hut with maybe one light bulb and no running water, but having these sorts of conversations and trying to find common ground, it builds confidence, a sense of humor, sensitivity to cultural values, because you realize what you can and can't talk about, or figure out how to talk about certain issues that could be sensitive issues. My French improved enough that I could, make it through the day and not feel like I was taking a vow of silence. So after I finished that, I ended up going to work in Israel for a year, because again, to talk about the linear career, I would say that many of my career choices were somewhat intentional. I didn't necessarily know what the next step was going to be, but I knew what I needed that step to include. So I figured I just had 6 months in the tropics. I wanted, a year in a desert, in an arid area, so that I'd have tropical and arid land experience. So I applied for, tried to find some work in Israel, and ended up working in Israel in the Negev Desert in the south for a year, doing research on feeding behavior of gerbils and venomous snakes. It was okay, it wasn't really a thrill moment, but it did what I wanted it to do, which was it put me in the right place to be able to have conversations with people who were doing some of the most progressive research on arid land agriculture in the world. And so I fell into my PhD research and ended up doing research on growing trees in the desert with harvested rainwater. So like these micro catchments where you put, there are these dirt walls around big fields, and there were trees with like a sorghum Sudan grass hybrid grass crop in between, and seeing how tree density impacts soil health and the growth of the tree and the growth of the animal crop. I'm sort of simplifying what the research was, but so there, I was checking off my next thing. I was getting the PhD, I could use the French and improve the French, and I had been in an emerging market. And then I finished up the PhD and I was trying to decide what do I do. And my advisor suggested, well, if there's a couple of agencies within the federal government that will give you really good practical experience, and if you want to go overseas at some point, you can take what you learn and go overseas. And so he recommended like the Forest Service, Park Service, Natural Resources Conservation Service, the EPA, and maybe one or two others. So I got a job with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, working with farmers in the Catskill Mountains of New York. Anyone here from New York? So you know where the Catskill Mountains are? Kind of, sort of? No? It's across the other side of the Hudson. And so I was working with farmers and helping them to put conservation practices on the ground so that you can keep manure out of the water, out of rivers, or you could keep nutrients that they put on their fields, commercial fertilizers, out of the water and improving water quality. So basically keeping the clean water clean and filtering the dirty water so that we have cleaner drinking water and cleaner aquatic habitats. So then it was, okay, here I am, 2.5 years in the Catskills. I had a son, he was like 2.5 by then, and the whole idea of raising him there and me staying there the rest of my life, while it had been wonderful, was not what I thought was the best next step. So again, here I had an idea of what I was looking for. I didn't necessarily know where I was going with it, but there was intent in the next step. And I got a 6-week detail, sort of like an internship, to go work for the same agency in USDA in Washington. And then that led to my next job, which was in Washington developing national policy for that same agency. I think some of the things that I started to realize were really important were mentors. Did you guys talk about mentors? Anybody have a mentor here? Anybody have an informal mentor, someone who's just been an important, person for guidance, leadership? Could be your parents, could be an older sibling, could be who knows who. So the guy who was my supervisor when I worked in the Catskills, some of my coworkers, I think, were kind of afraid of him, but I sort of realized this guy knows an amazing amount. And he was willing to teach me what he knows. So I would try and get him to come visit me in my county all the time, and we'd go out to farms, and it would just be this wonderful dump of years and years of experience, and sort of a really good relationship that developed out of that. So anyway, so I went to Washington, had this job, and also had a bunch of informal mentors. And mentors can be, I think my first mentors were mostly men, and then at some point I really felt kind of a void because I don't know, depending what career you're working in, I think some careers may be harder for women than others, and certainly this was 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, it was even harder. And so I wanted to talk to other women and see how they were handling their careers, how were they handling some of the choices of raising a kid and managing your career at the same time. Or how do you handle when you're in a room full of mostly men and you have a wonderful idea and they don't listen to you, but then one of them says the same thing and everybody says, oh, what a wonderful idea. Anybody experience that here, male or female? Yeah, it's really frustrating, isn't it? So mentors are really important for helping you figure out how to handle those like office situations, those work situations where you could take a really long time to try different things and see what works and see what doesn't. Or you might feel like you keep coming up without success. And so when you can find a mentor, and again, it's not uncommon to have several different mentors at the same time who are sort of mentoring you for different things. And you can bounce these issues that you have off of them, or great ideas off of them, and say, how do you think that I could bring this idea to life, or how should I handle this situation? So then I went from USDA across the mall in Washington to working at the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, on agricultural environmental issues. And at some point then I decided I was ready to try something different, and I went into private industry, worked at PepsiCo for about 9 years, and left PepsiCo and went to be I was an independent consultant, and then a week and a half ago I started a new job in a nonprofit, the American Farmland Trust. So I don't know whether you call that a linear journey or not, but each step has been somewhat mindful of, in order to get in the abstract where I want to go, I think I need these sorts of experiences, these sorts of skills. How am I going to find a position or have a critical experience, a project that I work on that will help me develop those skills? And I think something important for you guys to think about is in those 3 to 7 years that Doug was talking about as being sort of drifting years, even if you end up in a job that you are just miserable at, or is miserable for you, I don't mean that you're bad at it, but it is just miserable for you, even that to me is beneficial, because it's every bit as worthwhile to find out situations that you don't like, that you don't thrive in, that you just feel no growth from, because you can say, okay, I know what I don't want, so now I can at least go for what I do want. And every step along the way, when you can sort of better identify what you like and what you don't like, what you want and what you don't want, makes you actually a much stronger interviewer. Is that like a delayed reaction because I pushed the percentage thing over there? So it makes you a stronger interviewee, and it just makes you probably just better able to articulate what you're looking for. I should say, at any time that you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, okay? This is going to be way more fun for all of us if there's dialogue. How did my Grinnell experience impact my career? So I grew up in a family where we were taught to ask questions. We were taught to be curious, always ask why, try to understand how things work the way they do, why they do the way they do, why do people do what they do, and understand motivations. And coming to Grinnell, and how many of you have stayed in your halls, the dorms, sitting alongside the walls of the hallway for hours, just having great conversations, or in your dorm room? Please say a lot of you have, otherwise this experience has really changed. I think, and you're whether you are in a clean and pure state of mind or an altered state of mind, and you're exploring things and asking questions of, why does the world work the way it does, or sort of experimenting with different ideas and theories for things, I think that the freedom to do that is an amazing way to develop a skill that's important in probably just about any career. If you want a sort of a strategy or strategic thinking career, the ability to ask questions and try to understand why things are the way they are is really important. I also think that if you guys are writing a lot of papers and ever frustrated with the feedback that you get on your papers, probably never happens, right? And you're thinking, oh my God, I worked so hard on this paper and I got all this feedback, and I could have really improved it in this way, and it may feel like you're really busting your buns to improve your writing skills or your verbal communication skills if you do a lot of presentations. All I can tell you is I think pretty much no matter what career you go into, the ability to communicate either on paper or verbally is really, really critical. The ability to convince someone to present an argument for something is really critical. The ability to write concisely and just with the most critical points, but also the ability to give enough detail and color to say, so that you can explain why something, why someone should make a certain decision. Why should someone take on that project that you think is really important and will be an amazing innovation of the next decade or something. So I know it may feel like it's a pain in the butt and a lot of work, but those communication skills are really critical. I think also, when I was at Grinnell, I think only 10% of the student body was either Americans who had grown up overseas, or it was non-American students. I'm not sure what the numbers are today, but most of my friends were from that 10%. And I think the ability to interact with people who don't come from your bubble, if there's one thing we learned about 2016, the election, was many of us live in our own bubble. And whether you love the bubble around you or not, the way that you're going to be successful in life is to figure out how to communicate with people in other bubbles and break down the walls of those bubbles. And I think being in a diverse student body and really taking advantage of your fellow students and the backgrounds they come from is pretty critical. Are you guys with me so far?
Yeah.
Anything revolutionary that I'm saying? Anything surprising? Are you guys awake? Connecting who you are. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say something. I think early on you talked a little bit about how there's still some valuable experiences that you do in life. I thought that was somewhat surprising because that's all often kind of like contradictory to the narrative that I received from my parents, which is like, well, from other external forces and parents, where maybe you go on and get a job. Sure, it's something you don't like, but at the end of the day, you need to pay the bills, you need to take care of kids, you need to do all this X, Y, and Z, and ultimately you're trying to balance out the pros that you get outside of your career. Like, I don't know where to go with that, but more or less to say, like, you kind of just were driven by something else to say, or,
Well, so it's very true. At the end of the day, you will all at some point have to pay some bills. You will all at some point have somebody you have to be mindful of and care for. It may not be your kids, it might be your parents or an aunt or uncle or just a best friend. And so, yeah, the job that you have, you may not love it, but at least it allows you to do that. Whether it's because it gives you a salary that you need, or it gives you the flexibility in your own schedule that you need. The job that I have now allows me to work from home, which is amazing. So, I mean, I'm also very excited about the job, but you can go after jobs for different reasons, for sure. But I think what I was getting at is, I'll let you in on the big secret of my college career. I was here for 2 years, and I ended up getting on academic probation, and I had to leave school for a semester, went to the State University of New York, student purchase for a semester, went from getting like C's and D's here to getting A's and B's there, and came back to campus, was here for 3 weeks, and I just said, you know what, I'm miserable here, I don't really know what I'm doing, I'm just not happy. So I left school, and I went to work in temporary jobs, like through these job agencies. And the agencies, in order to place me at the time, they give you these like really simple math tests and writing tests, and I'd get like a 99 or 100, and they'd say, oh my God, you're such a genius. This is amazing, and oh, your writing is so good. And I think I'm not a genius or whatever, because from the town I grew up in and my Grinnell community, I wasn't like any genius, I was average. But okay, that seemed weird, but so I went to work in these jobs, and it was those jobs that they were okay, they weren't rewarding. I knew that There was nothing more that would come from them, like no real professional development. And so that's sort of the job that was, that made me realize this is why I want to go back to school, because I don't want to do this for the rest of my career. So I came back to Grinnell and everything was totally different. I went on for 2 other degrees on top of that. So I think that's sort of where I mean you can learn a lot from a job that's not so wonderful, about situations that you don't want. But what you said, it's absolutely true. There's probably some time in almost everybody's life where you feel like you're going through the motions just because you need a paycheck or you need flexibility of that job. But hopefully, because you're going to spend more than 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in that job, hopefully you're not going to be stuck in that position for too long. Much better to enjoy what you're doing.
It's just like, well, the narrative more or less on society like that is because my mother particularly grew up in a situation where she was on the lower end of the middle class or below that, and the interest was, well, let's focus on surviving first before moving on to doing some developing and maturing new interests. So,
Absolutely, and so when I have a 22-year-old son, when I took him college hunting, I really, as much as I have always said, I think the liberal arts education is amazing and wonderful, and I thought it was the best thing. Then when it came to trying to help my son decide what to do for his college career, I forced him to go visit 1 or 2 liberal arts schools in the Northeast. And as we were walking around, he didn't like it. As we were walking around the campus, I was looking at, the stuff that's on the walls, like all the job announcements and the different academic program announcements. I was looking at those things, and I sort of thought, I don't know, how many of these people are going to really save the world? How many of these people and please don't take that to mean that I don't think you're going to save the world. I think we are all going to do wonderfully impactful things, but there was something about it where I was just at that point in time very focused on doctors, engineers, teachers, as opposed to someone who's working for like a Wall Street firm trying to make mega bucks, right? And so, but it was also really fun for me to realize, wow, this thing that you always said to everybody is such a wonderful education. You're really challenging yourself to think about it in a whole new different way. So make sure you're not just going through the motions. Make sure you're getting a lot out of this education, both in the classroom and outside of it. Let's see. Oh, right. The other thing is, so that first job in the Catskill was one of the most wonderful things I loved about it. I was sort of the queen of my turf. I could decide pretty much what I was going to do each day of the week and at what time of the day. I could wear blue jeans and hiking boots or my wellies because I was going out to farms a lot of the time. I could decide when I was working outside and when I was working inside, and it was great. That sort of a thing, and knowing what you like and what you don't like is really important. But when I was doing my PhD research, for the field season in Israel, I would go out to the field and I would prune 1,000 trees each season. I would have to plot the trees to 2 meters by about, half a meter, and separate the woody biomass from the leafy biomass. And it would be like 100+ degrees out there, just hot as blazes, really dry. But to me, I was in seventh heaven, but some of my friends from that research site who were lab types would come outside to help me. And they'd be like, this is okay for one day. I don't see how you can do this. I'd rather be titrating something in the laboratory. And I'd go hang with them in the lab, and they'd be titrating in the laboratory. And I just think, man, that is so not for me. I don't have that kind of patience to do such a fine motor skill thing. But it's really important, again, to go through whatever it is to figure out that this is what I like and this is what I don't like. So experimenting is really important, and diversity of experiences is really important.
Beth, could I ask them to address some aspects of the figure out what you like and dislike. The career match book that is assigned for this class is really to help you figure out what you are best or like best to do. Let's see, how many have taken the psychological profiles part of the book? Okay. Now, were you convinced that you were correctly identified your likes? In other words, did those color codes really, were they accurate for you? I see some people shaking their heads, yes. Everyone think that they were somewhat accurate? Somewhat accurate? Okay. That's an important thing to think about. Is there anyone here who thought that the book missed the mark entirely and you were a very different person than was described by your profile? Anyone really reject that perspective? Okay, no one is willing to admit it, I guess. But and of course, one of the things that I suggest is look at the profiles for your speakers and see if this makes any sense. Or someone with a profile like you particularly genial in your interaction with them? What do you learn from this? Okay, so this is an important time to be thinking about those kinds of issues.
We had a little bit of a back and forth by email where Doug said, yeah, you gotta take, I like my speakers to take it, and I looked at the questions and I thought, I don't know, I feel like I'm 50% on either side of the aisle for each of these things, and or 50% of the time I would answer this way, another 50% of the time I would answer that way. And I was, and like you had said in the email, be really careful to think that, to be sure that you're not answering the way you want to answer or the way that you think you should answer, but the way that you really are. And I think what I have noticed is, I mean, I would usually say I'm sort of a shy introvert kind of person. I hate going to a reception where I don't really know anyone. I don't have my wing person at least, right? At least I used to hate that. But you know, in order to like go through the progression of my career, I kind of had to go to receptions on Capitol Hill. I had to go to all different job receptions and stuff. And it's like going to a party, right? If you sit in the corner and you don't talk to anyone, not only do you feel pretty miserable and hopeless about yourself, but you have absolutely wasted that time. You have gained nothing from that time. So I sort of have taught myself over the years that how to be more outgoing, how to be more of a group sort of person as opposed to inwardly focused. You know, do you like to do things as part of a team or independently? And it's like, well, it all depends on the team that I have. And it all depends on the project, right? So, yeah, I think those are some good questions to ask yourself and to really think about. Because if you are a solitary player, but you're in a job where you're going to have to be working with teams all the time and building consensus all the time, it's probably not the right job for you unless you're willing to make some dramatic changes in yourself. And some of those changes are possible, but not always. A couple other things that I think are really important. And when I was your age and older, nobody really ever talked to me about this stuff. I think these are, I don't know, the phrases that we use more perhaps. So networking. I thought I knew, when I worked at PepsiCo, I kind of thought I knew what networking was. You know, I go to work things, I go to where I'm with other PepsiCo employees or with, to meetings or conferences where there's other people from other like food and beverage companies. And I talked to some of them, I'd exchange business cards, and you're gonna really laugh at this one, it was really pathetic. I'd go back to my hotel room and I'd hold on to this business card and I'd say, should I connect on LinkedIn or should I not? What are they gonna think of me if I do? What are they gonna think of me if I don't? I mean, I can't tell you how long I've labored over the stupidity of this. And then, when I left PepsiCo, I had some time working with a coach at an outplacement firm, and a lot of that is sort of helping people who are mid-career having to find new jobs, you know, rewrite your resume, think about how you dress, how you present yourself so that you don't look like someone who's stodgy 20 years ago, but is more trendy with it. And so a lot of the work there was on networking. All I can tell you is I don't spend more than half a second before I think of clicking on LinkedIn. And I am not shy about looking for who do I want to talk to because that might help me get a job at this company. Who do I know who's second or third degree connected with that person on LinkedIn? Reaching out to that person saying, can you make an introduction for me? Again, even if it's like a third connection. Can you make an introduction for me to this person who can make an introduction to this person because I want him in with this organization. And nobody's going to think any worse of you. People are going to think that you're very strategic for doing that. They're going to think that you're not afraid to talk to people you don't know, that you can strike up a conversation, that you can ask them intelligent questions, and that you're a real go-getter. So don't waste your time being like I was for many years. So what do you guys do for, how many of you think you are good networkers? Do you enjoy it?
I don't mind it. Actually, I enjoy it, yeah.
Is it, so it's pretty easy for you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I like meeting new people.
yeah. So you can just try, you can go into a room with people you don't know and walk up to a total stranger and strike up a conversation with them?
Yeah.
How many of you are total opposite of that? How is it? It's painful? You feel like I'm a bright woman, but I have no idea what to say to you? Yeah, and I think so the other thing is I would go into rooms where people are already in their little cliques, you know, they're talking to one another, and I think, oh my God, they all know each other. I'm gonna be the interloper who comes in and, you know what, they're all feeling the same insecurity as you are. And you might be the one who actually, by intervening in that conversation, you could be the person who takes them away from the boring conversation they were having, but they were being polite and not showing it. So, you know, people like to talk about themselves. That's why I'm up here for an hour and a half, right? So you can just go up to people, ask them what they do, ask them what they like about their job, what they don't like, what are trends that they see in their industry or in their field. And it takes all the onus off of you and all the focus off of you. And they think, wow, this person was pretty cool because they give me an opportunity to talk. If you can remember that, you will find networking to be a lot easier. I also, I guess, felt like it was a Grinnell arrogance back when I was a student here. If my parents said, oh, hey Beth, do you want us to introduce you to so-and-so, a friend of ours, because they work in a field that, you know, you're interested in. And I'd be like, nope, I'm doing it on my own. I'm not taking help from my parents, and I'm going to find my way. And I guess, you know, hindsight 20/20, the wisdom of being a little bit older, that's sort of stupid. It's a waste of time. If someone offers you help, if someone offers you connection, you know, as long as it's all legal and totally ethical, take it. There's no reason to waste time in trying to do that yourself. If you want to cut down that 3 to 7 year drifting time, anybody who offers you a connection, an introduction, say yes, thank you, give them your email and your phone number. When they make the introduction, act on it within 24 hours. You don't have to say a lot. Just ask the person they're introducing you to, ask if they've got 15 minutes to talk with you. Nobody wants to give you half an hour. Days are really tight. 15 minutes is pretty affordable, yeah. Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, well, more or less trying to formulate a way to say what I want to say. I'm kind of just awfully curious about when does networking become extremely useful, I suppose. I mean, 'cause so far it's just no different from what I do with my friends every single day. Going and sitting at the table, talking with them about what's come up in my head, basically.
Okay.
And, I mean, so far it just seems like the only reason why we connect with people that we don't know is for the possible chance that they say, oh, we need somebody to work for us. Maybe I might pick that guy that I met like, 2 weeks ago, or 3.5 weeks ago. And to me, in like my mind, that seems really unlikely that someone would just pick someone. I mean, like, that they only met once, that they only met a couple weeks ago, and bring them on the team.
So you guys know you have like the head of food service here,
Yeah.
Beth Mosier. So I was here for a reading and planning committee meeting in the fall. And Paige, whatever her name is, Everly, I was talking about some sustainability stuff and that I would be very glad to donate like a certain amount of consulting time or something to the campus. And what was the campus doing on sustainability? And she introduced me to Jeanette. And so we got on the phone, we emailed a bit, we got on the phone, had this great conversation. And then yesterday I was meeting with some students from Doug's other class. And I realized I was right outside dining services. And suddenly I said, wait, I know somebody in there. And so I went in and to see if she was available, and sure enough, luckily she was, and we chatted for 10 minutes. Is anything professionally gonna come out of it, like dollar and cents wise? I don't know, and I don't really care. But there's a bit of, we're building a relationship. There's professional development, we talked about some sustainability stuff. And if there's something sustainability wise that comes out of that, that helps the campus, then it's great. You never know, but now we know one another, we see each other face to face. And I think if she has a question, she wouldn't hesitate to pick up the phone or email me and say, hey Beth, how do you think we should handle this situation? And if I was working with, if I had some other food service question and I said, hey Jeanette, how does this work in food service generally? I wouldn't hesitate to pick up the phone, so now we're buds. Right? What do you say? Yeah, exactly. So, and it's not, I think you don't need, if you do it right, you don't need to worry about people thinking that you always have the ulterior motive of looking for a job. This is just an exchange. I'm curious about how things are done. I think they may have some questions, and we can have a great conversation or two, and there's something productive that maybe results from it. But I'm not worried about whether it leads to a consulting job or something. That being said, people will know when you're looking for jobs, and you shouldn't be bashful about it. Everybody's been there, everybody is there, everybody will be there. Does that help?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah. Yes, so I did sustainability. My first position was working with North American bottlers, so they have like franchise bottlers, and trying to move them to be doing more sustainability practices. How do they reduce their energy usage? How do they reduce water usage? Generate less waste, or find a revenue stream for that waste so it becomes a byproduct instead of waste. What partners and government programs are out there who could help them become more sustainable. Most of that was focusing on environmental sustainability. And then I had a position there with this really cool team. It was like a think tank where we were sort of looking at the nexus of certain issues. So as the company was trying to broaden its portfolio into having more healthier products, it generally brings you much closer to the agricultural, to the raw material, to the agricultural production. So it means you might be bringing, improving things nutritionally, but having more negative environmental impact. or social impact, and then how do you deal with that? And so that you're making decisions consciously as opposed to oops by default, and mistakes that then are harder to correct. And then my last position there, I was in R&D, and I was developing solution sets that would help the agricultural supply chain become more environmentally and socially and economically sustainable. And I was also trying to integrate environmental and social sustainability into various processes, like the innovation process, so that you ask, if this is your product, you ask the right questions up front, instead of getting to the end and saying, oh darn, there's, I don't know, some wrapping on here or some glue on here that means we can't recycle it anymore. Or this has cocoa in it from Cote d'Ivoire and it's harvested through child labor. Oops. Or, you know, there's more energy used in producing it. Whereas if you ask those questions earlier on, you can try and find workarounds, or you can build change into those supply chains as you're making the product. So that's what I was doing there in a nutshell. But I guess another thing is to think about how many of you, sorry for the repeat from yesterday's class, how many of you think you're going to work in government? How many of you think government would be miserable to work in? Let's revisit that. How many of you are going to work in industry? How many of you think industry will be miserable to work in? How many of you are going to work for a nonprofit, civil society? How many of you think that would be horrible? But wait, did you say you thought you would end up working in it?
No.
Or no, it was you next to him, okay. How many, so why do you guys think government would be horrible?
Government shutdown.
Huh? I
The
can't hear
government
you.
shutdown.
What?
The government shutdown, for
Government
example.
shutdown, yeah, that's okay. What else?
Listen to Trump.
Can everyone hear her?
No.
Can you speak louder? Okay. Women, it's really important that you have agency and you are sitting at the table and your voice is heard. No apologies. Okay, make
I
sure
feel
they,
like a lot of people want to go into government work to like make a change or like work at the grassroots level, but are often very frustrated by the fact that things don't move as fast as they want them to, and things like people who tend to be like say corrupt or
wait, do people tend to be what?
corrupt or like that's my experience from listening to people who do work in the government who go in with good intentions and come out with realizing that things are far too bureaucratic or too slow, and people don't feel like they're making the tangible difference they set out to be, which I believe could be very frustrating.
That's true. Yeah, those, I mean, I've heard all of those before. Those of you who said it would be miserable to work in private industry, why? Why?
Partially because I think that there's more incentive to nonprofit than there is to like be socially responsible or all these other things that I value personally on a personal level, and some of those decisions to make profit can be at the expense of those other values that I think
About nonprofits, why is it miserable to work in a nonprofit?
Well, if you want to start a new project or a new task, you always have to worry about fundraising and, figuring out, where funding is going to come in order to expand, just the organization itself, and your personal success within that organization. I think sometimes it can be a task that really takes away from talent.
So I guess what I would say to you guys is, as someone who has worked in all three sectors, yeah, go ahead.
Can I add to that? I also think like nonprofits have less structure. Like I've worked in like industries and stuff before. Like I had an internship, and I like the structure of it. Then I've also like had an internship in a nonprofit, and there's no structure. Like you don't know. Like they just like send you to do whatever you want, and like there's no like set thing that or opportunities for growth even. So I think the industries have more of that, like the for-profit world.
So I guess I would say, I think you can have all of those experiences, for better and for worse, in any of those sectors. I found some amazingly bright, dedicated, hardworking people in government and in private industry and in the nonprofit sector, and I found the complete opposite in those sectors as well. I've experienced in private industry where things don't work nearly as fast as they all, as the sector sort of brags that it does. So I think what's really important is to figure out how to work within whatever system it is that you go into. And don't give up because things go slowly. Just try to find your little wins on a short-term basis and try to find ways to work around systems in an ethical but productive way. And I think we are seeing a big trend. I mean, the HR person when I was at PepsiCo said the millennials, and I assume it's probably the same with Gen Z, you guys, millennials wanted to work for companies that had a mission, like impact, positive social impact or environmental impact. So therefore, that was one of the things that was pushing companies to do more sustainability because their employees wanted it, right? I mean, many of us want to work at a place that has positive impact on society, and many of us are the brightest minds of our day, and companies are losing out, organizations are losing out if they don't hire us. So what are they going to do? They're going to try to change the work environment to fit some of the things that you guys are looking for. So don't assume that all industry is only focused on a profit tomorrow or today, on a fraction of a second sale of stocks, you know. But there's a growing ability to make sustainability change and long-term change in corporations. Don't assume that everyone in government, and it probably depends on not only different countries and different branches of government and different agencies within government and different times, like administrations, whatever, that you know, the degree of honesty and playing by the rules, the readiness and willingness to try to get things done. So I worked at EPA. They do rulemaking. The rulemaking process, by definition in this country, means you are going out for public comment on a regular basis. And you have to sort of try and address a lot of that public comment in the whole rulemaking process. So you know what, there are people who would spend years and years of their career on like one area of rulemaking, you know, like around effluent discharge or something. And you really need patience, it's true, but keep your eye on the long term, you're doing the right thing and something that's good for society. And nonprofits, I think we're seeing nonprofits change too. One of the reasons that the organization I'm working for now wanted to hire me had to do with me having worked in business, because they wanted someone who thought that way to come and sort of help with a focus on metrics and really quantifying impact and change. So don't be hemmed in by your stereotypes, okay? Give things a try. So what else, guys? What other questions and comments? Yep.
What are your views on Grinnell investing in fossil fuels?
On Grinnell investing in fossil fuels?
Like the college?
Can we turn off the camera? I'm going to answer this differently, because
We can talk about this.
I've not looked at Grinnell's investment portfolio, so it's something I would want to look at first. I am glad that, I think is it the New York City and New York State pensions are pulling out of fossil fuels, but I think that one of the things that I tend to see, and I say this as someone who was your age once and was exactly this way, youth tends to think in extreme. Young people tend to think in extremes. We have to pull out of fossil fuels. Well, pulling out of fossil fuels, okay, but you have to support the development of, and the education of, and the policy development for everything else. So like there are people in New York who praise Governor Cuomo for banning fracking in New York State. And I support that, but I don't support it if you don't also try to push for more fuel efficient vehicles, use of more electric vehicles, better public transportation infrastructure, and better education about what the changes are that we have to make in order to survive without fracking. Does that make sense? So I gave you a non-answer. Any other questions? It wasn't really a non-answer. It was just, I think it's never as simple as saying divest. That being said, when I was a student here, we definitely protested to divest from South Africa because we were protesting apartheid. So what else? You just want to hear me talk more? Okay, let's see. How many of you feel like it's important to have a job where you're creating value, having a positive impact? I guess if I ask the opposite, probably nobody's going to raise their hand. Do you feel like there would be peer pressure here to not work for private industry, given like what you were saying? Is the feeling that private industry is just out for the dollar? Yeah.
I think if you're talking about like recommendations from professors and things like that in the career center, I think they'll help you with whatever you want to do. I think if you don't want to get an eye roll for short and tell people you're going into the industry sort of people, then I don't think that the college itself or the resources here would disenfranchise anyone from going after a future recommendation.
Okay, but who do you listen to more, your professors in the career center or your peers? You wouldn't. That's good. No, that's good. But unfortunately, not everybody is like that, right? A lot of us really do bow a little bit to peer pressure. Yeah.
I will also kind of comment on that it largely depends on your circle of peers that are here at Cornell. Like for instance, in my example, I'm around a series of peers that want to pursue PhDs and masters right after they go into graduation. And I mean, to be honest, for a long time while I was here, I had that aim as well. Part of the reason why I joined that group too. I'm not going to be that aim because I just know based on my understanding of current circumstances that probably isn't the most feasible for me to do. But that's all I necessarily have to say. That what depends on the and kind of community that you create around yourself for those.
And you know what? Don't give up on the master's or PhD. I say there's a lot of value in taking time off and working. And really seeing if that field that you're about to invest a couple, 2, 5, 7, 8 years in is really the one that you like. Not to mention that you make sure you've got the financial wherewithal to do it. Because going into buttloads of debt is, yeah. Did you have something?
Yeah, I'm still sort of formulating my question, but it's in response to this idea of the eye rolling of peers. I think that certain sectors or institutions, when you say you're joining them or intending on joining them, I think they get more eye rolling than others. And I guess I'm curious, as someone who's worked in private industry, not-for-profit, and government, what you would say about the notion of changing one of these institutions or sectors from the inside. For example, things like law enforcement, like the working in finance, things like that, that a progressive institution like Grinnell might look down upon. Like, what would you say about changing those institutions from the inside?
First of all, I would just caution you in your assumption that the institution looks down on something. That way, I almost wonder sometimes if, as students in institutions like this, we think that we're supposed to think something,